When the doctors gave me the choice and the options on the table, either to save her life or to let her pass, and peacefully without no pain, it was a small chance that she might live after surgery. But I chose life because I think that anybody deserves a fighting chance. So I decided, my wife and I decided to go ahead with the surgery and give her the chance to fight herself. My daughter, Malyia, is special because she has a positive outlook on life in general, on how well she can accomplish things, how she's not different in any other way from anybody else besides the fact that her legs are metal. When I realized that this could have been possibly avoided by doctors seeing my daughter sooner, of course I was very angry. But I was also focusing on my daughter's condition at the present time. But it also made me think about a lot about myself if I would have, demanded her getting attention sooner. I mean, there shouldn't be these things where we have to look back on it now and say, I wish I could have done this different. I wish I would have done this. Well, my daughter doesn't get that choice anymore. She has to live with this for the rest of her life. So hopefully this would be a learning experience for the doctors. That's why I would forgive them and tell them that, Amy, just get better at what you do, or pay more attention.
Every day, somewhere in America, more than 300 innocent men, women, and children become victims of medical malpractice at the hands of incompetent and negligent doctors. Last year, over 98,000 victims were killed by doctors. More than 4 million victims are permanently injured each year.
Today, the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines in When Doctors Go Wrong, Malyia Jeffers' story, to examine how Moseley Collins, the Jeffers family attorney, successfully represented their family in a very challenging medical malpractice case. Malyia Jeffers was 2 years old when her parents took her to Sacramento's Methodist Hospital in November 2010 with a fever, discoloration, and weakness. The ER hospital staff told them to wait to see a medical doctor, and wait they did for 5 whole hours. Malyia's parents repeatedly asked and even begged hospital workers to treat their daughter, but the hospital staff told them to continue waiting. Malyia got sicker and weaker hour after hour until the bruising on her body rapidly increased, affecting her legs, arms, and face. Malyia's dad demanded assistance, and after 5 long hours, a doctor finally took a blood test. It suggested she was in liver failure. She was immediately finally flown in by helicopter to Stanford University's Lucile Packard Children's Hospital before she received the appropriate diagnosis. Doctors there found out that Malyia had a Streptococcus A bacterial infection that had invaded her blood and vital organs. To save her life, she was forced to undergo the amputation of her legs, her left arm, and all of her fingers on her right hand. Moseley Collins successfully settled this case for $10 million to be placed in a special needs trust for Malyia's present and future medical needs. This medical malpractice settlement ranks as one of the largest in California history. Today, Malyia is on the long road to recovery. She is still undergoing therapy and will need expensive medications, custom prosthetics, special garments, and wheelchairs for the rest of her life. And most importantly, her parents are so very glad she's still alive. Moseley Collins has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in Sacramento, in California, and across the nation. He has seen many innocent and hardworking people injured and killed by negligent and incompetent doctors, hospitals, and nurses. Moseley's passion is problem solving. He approaches each medical negligence case as a scientist trying to solve a puzzle. He's seen many patients suffer needless injury, and because of that, he is driven to help people who have been harmed by incompetent and negligent doctors. Moseley's goal? To make medicine safer and more accountable, and of course, to get justice for his clients. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Sacramento, California.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Moseley Collins to the show. Welcome to the show, Moseley.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate being here.
Tell our audience a little bit about your law firm and what type of law that you practice.
Well, I represent injured people, and unfortunately, sometimes people who have lost a loved one. But if you're injured, whether it's by an auto accident, whether it's by a plane crash, whether it's by medical malpractice, whether a doctor or hospital hurt you, those are the kind of people we represent. We represent, the little guy against the big guy. It's the David and Goliath kind of fight.
You could have been a corporate lawyer. You could have been working for IBM or Exxon Mobil or something like that. Why did you decide to represent the little guy?
Well, it appealed to me because I'm a very strong Christian person, and Jesus was helping the poor. He was helping the maimed. He was helping the injured. And so those are my clients. The same people that Jesus was helping and healing, those are my clients. And so I feel good about that. It's very rewarding, really, to take someone who's got no hope and so injured and then make a difference and make their life livable, whereas, otherwise it wouldn't be.
I also understand people can call your law office, which they do, and get a free Bible, right?
Yes. We've given away thousands of free Bibles. And so I will tell your viewers right now, if you're viewing this program and you want prayer or you want a free Bible or you want to pray with us to receive Christ as Savior, call us. We'll pray with you. We'll send you a free Bible.
Easy number to remember. What is it?
It's area code 916-444-4444.
All fours.
All fours.
Just got to remember the 916.
916, all fours. It's Sacramento, all fours.
Okay. Today we are here talking about a very unusual case, Malyia Jeffers.
Heartbreaking case, really.
And would you tell us who Malyia is, please?
Malyia is a little girl who, when she was 2 years old, she was sick, and her parents took her to an emergency room in a local hospital, and they made her wait 5 hours.
We have a lot of pictures we're showing of her right now.
They made her wait 5 hours before a doctor saw her. It was actually a little more than 5 hours. And during that time, she got so sick that they couldn't reverse the infection. And so they had to, when they finally saw her, in fact, the father pushed through the nurses and said, I've got to see a doctor. And he pushed through and got her seen, and then they immediately, they looked at her over and they said, oh, she's too hurt, and they ended up life-flighting her to another hospital. They managed to save her life, but in the process, they had to amputate both her legs, her left arm, and all the fingers on her right hand.
And she was, what, 2 years old at the time?
2 years old.
What was her condition when they first brought her into the emergency room?
She had a fever. She had something called purpura, which is a purplish skin discoloration. And she couldn't stand up. She was obviously sick. But our emergency rooms, if you've ever been to one, sometimes they're so crowded and chaotic, and they didn't do the right thing. They didn't see her and they didn't treat her, and as a result, she almost died.
And so this is another case of being below the reasonable standard of care, right? Somebody who's critically ill, someone should recognize it. Physician didn't come out. No. In fact, as you said, the father basically burst through the emergency doors because his daughter was in really bad condition. And
he will tell you that he was so upset. He just finally said, and it takes a lot to do this because you feel a little intimidated in the hospital setting. I'm just going to push through the nurses and demand a doctor.
Right.
So here's a takeaway message for your viewers. You cannot be passive in the medical situation. You have to be thinking, am I getting treated fairly? Is this right? And if it's not, you have to demand the treatment that you need. You cannot surrender to them, to the white coats, because sometimes they will really hurt you.
Yeah, I've seen this time and time again. As you know, we do a lot of shows, and I always ask, for example, why didn't you get a second opinion? Why didn't you do something? And you brought up that very interesting term, white coats. people believe somebody in a white coat. We are
Yeah.
taught in our society
Yeah.
that this is a benevolent person,
Right.
that this person is out for your good and your good alone. When they're human, you know, most doctors are good people.
Yeah.
You know, but they do make mistakes.
They do.
And when they do make mistakes, then they have to be held accountable.
Yes.
Now,
There-
in this particular case, it's a highly unusual case because we're in California. There is a medical malpractice cap of $250,000. You never went to trial on this case.
That's correct.
In fact, our research shows that you settled this for a rather large amount, and I can say, because it's public knowledge, it's $10 million. How did you do this? What was the process that you went through that you were able to settle it quickly, and settle it for such a large amount of money?
Well, our problem was the cap of $250,000, which is completely unfair and completely unjust. And there's actually an attempt right now to change that.
Yes.
It was established 18 years ago, and it should be, by inflation, it should be $1 million today, but it's never been increased.
Yes.
So we had to try and layer in to the settlement everything she's going to need. I mean, at that time she was 3. So we had to predict what she would need at 40, 50, 60,
Yeah.
70 years of age.
Yeah.
And we added up all those costs. How many legs, because she lost both her feet. How many hands, because she lost essentially both her hands. How much medical care, how much attendant care, how much wage loss. We had to lay all that in, and we were able to get to that enormous number by carefully layering in everything she needs.
How long did it take to reach that agreed upon number?
I think it was about a year.
Really? And they did not want it to go to trial.
They did not.
Yeah.
What my experience is, and many lawyers are afraid of medical malpractice cases,
Yeah.
is if you get the right case and you do the right work and you show them what they did wrong and that there's no way out for them, then they will take responsibility for the harm they've done, and they will pay for it.
We are fortunate today to have with us Malyia
Yes.
and her dad, Ryan. So let's bring them on right now.
Great, they're great people.
It is my great privilege to introduce Ryan and Malyia Jeffers. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Good.
Yeah? How old are you?
5.
5? Are you a happy girl?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you could come on the show today, and thank you for bringing her. Take us back to that day when you brought her to the hospital and you were waiting there for 5 hours. What was wrong with her? What was going through your mind?
When we took her to the emergency room, not only because she has a fever, I know that's normal in kids.
Yeah.
So what brought to my alarm was that she was getting really lethargic and she had bruising on her cheek, and she didn't fall or anything. So I figured that was kind of odd with the fever not going down at all. So we took her to the emergency room, and I explained to the nurse that I knew something was wrong with her rather than just a fever. They described to me it was like a rash, and it was something that it's normal and will be seen next. And next became the whole entire story while we were there for the next 4 hours. And every hour I would go up to the nurse and describe to him the bruising was going from her face down to her hip, and it was really bad bruising.
Just discoloring all of her body.
Right.
Yeah.
And we kept taking her temperature, and it never dropped. And
What was her temperature?
it was usually about 103.
It's dangerous.
It stayed that way for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it was very odd to have that amount of temperature, being that we're giving her a Tylenol, ibuprofen combo, plus the bruising. And I knew it wasn't a rash because the rash didn't look like that. So every hour I would go and ask him to reevaluate her. And I'm in a place that you're supposed to get help.
Yeah.
You know, we live in a country where if you need help or your child's sick or you're sick, you go into an emergency room.
Right.
So I'm in the place I'm supposed to be.
And they're not doing anything.
I'm not doing anything except telling me to wait or you'll be in next. So
Yeah.
I'm being patient as possible. She was walking when she went into the ER. And after about 2.5 or 3 hours, she wasn't able to walk anymore.
Finally, what happened?
We were tired of waiting, and you're going to be next thing got kind of, we're just figuring we're never going to be seen. And I knew that, by the look of her, something was seriously wrong.
Yeah.
I thought it was liver failure. I asked the nurse if it's possible that she's going to liver failure. And they said, you'll be next, don't worry about it. So I told my wife, I said, as soon as the door opens to the doctor, I said, you got to follow right behind me and don't stop. So I picked her up, and she couldn't, because she couldn't walk, and I barged through there. And I asked to be seen by a doctor, and at first, like, I was getting apprehended by the security. But the doctor saw her and knew right away. I think he knew something that I knew too. So
yeah, basically you saved her life by doing that.
I could have went in earlier, but
yeah,
I didn't.
Yeah, they flew her, medevaced her to another hospital, correct?
Yeah.
Stanford, wasn't it Stanford?
Right.
And what is her condition today?
Well, she's healthy now,
Yeah.
but she did lose her legs and her hand and stuff.
In order to save her life, they
Right.
had to amputate certain parts, right?
Right.
How has she adjusted with all of these challenges that she's gone through?
I think with the positive people we put around her and the awesome staff at Stanford being so helpful and cheerful all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that, a lot has to do with her too and her attitude.
Yeah.
She doesn't give up on anything, and she has the attitude of nothing's wrong with me, this is the way I am.
Yeah.
And from the day she woke up in the hospital, she was laughing and kicking the ball around with her legs, and she was doing things that people thought that she wouldn't do. So she's been that way since. She's been through 5 pairs of prosthetics.
Wow.
And
So she keeps outgrowing them.
keeps outgrowing them, and
Yeah.
they want to try new things on her, like the knee bending,
Yeah.
rather than sticking out straight.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of new technology that we that they're doing now.
Boy, you are a walking scientific miracle, aren't you? You know that, right? I got one last question for you. For all parents, when they go into an emergency room, if they're not getting the kind of treatment that they need right away, what should they do?
I never would advise doing what I did.
Yeah.
But I also know that parents know their children a lot more
Yeah.
than other people. So
Yeah.
if it's very hard to tell somebody to bust through a door, because you can't go through busting through doors when your child has a temperature, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
But I think that they should act with their instinct and what their gut tells them. And my gut told me that my daughter didn't have much longer to live.
One of the reasons we did this show is because your lawyer, Moseley Collins, he got this case settled, and it was a rather large settlement. And we were very impressed with that because he really did his homework. What do you think of Moseley and his law firm?
Moseley and his law firm were, when I talked to a lot of lawyers at the time, it took me just meeting with him to know that I could have someone to talk to outside of all the law issues. And he treated me like family. And at the time where we had to pick up all our stuff and move to Stanford, we had no money at the time. I had stopped working, and he helped through so much of this stuff that I didn't have parents to cry on or to lean on, and he was that person to me.
Yeah.
It still is.
Okay, good. Well, I want to thank you very much, Malyia, for being on the program. Okay, thanks for coming here. And we hope to meet you again soon. And thank you, Ryan. Moseley, tell our audience a little bit about medical malpractice cases. How do you know do you have one or not?
Well, I think if you look at what happened to you or your loved one, and you just say to yourself, that wasn't right. There's a gut feeling, there's a smell that what happened is completely not right. See, it's not like the car ran the red light. It's hard to tell because, the medical establishment has their own language and their own training. But if it feels wrong, you should probably call a medical malpractice lawyer, and not all lawyers are medical malpractice lawyers, and say, what do you think? And then let him investigate.
You handle a lot of medical malpractice cases, don't you? So it would behoove someone to go to a lawyer who has that kind of experience. Because, for example, if I suspect something went wrong with one of my family members at a hospital, if I call up there and ask for the records, it's pretty difficult to get them.
It's hard to get
They're supposed to give you them, but they make it really difficult because they don't want the evidence going out there. You, on the other hand, can subpoena the records, right?
Yeah, we can. And we always like the client to get them first, just to safeguard, because once I subpoena them, I think there's a tendency for the hospital to want to change the record.
Yeah. And that's against the law, by the way.
That's against the law.
In your world, it's called spoliation.
Yeah.
In our world, it's called lying and cheating.
Exactly. But I just want to say there's 2 good reasons why medical malpractice lawsuits are good for society, because people worry about that. Number 1 is it will make the viewer safer. So when I sued the hospital for not taking care of little Malyia for 5 hours. All the hospitals in the world know about that because
Yeah.
it was such a big result. And all the hospitals in the world are saying, hey, we can't let that happen here.
Exactly.
Hey, Bill, we got to make sure we're not keeping kids out
Yeah.
there 5 hours, are we?
Yeah.
So it helps make everyone
It
safer.
wakes them up.
Yeah.
You know, and the only thing that wakes people up is a big price tag. isn't it?
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
That's right.
Because nobody likes to sue, do they?
That's right.
Ryan and Malyia told us that they would give anything to have avoided this lawsuit, just to have his daughter
Absolutely.
alone.
Absolutely. So the first reason the medical malpractice lawsuits are good is because it makes, wherever you are, it makes your hospital safer and your doctor safer because they are looking at what we're doing and they're saying, I'm not going to let that happen to my patients. The second reason they're good is because it takes the burden of financial care for these people off of society, off of the state, and it places it on the people who caused the harm.
Who are responsible.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people really don't understand that and really don't realize it. If the doctors don't pay, the ones who caused it, then the taxpayer pays.
That's right.
If everybody understood that, there wouldn't be caps in place.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. So we're trying to take and make people, you have to force it.
Yeah.
You have to force the hospital, the doctor, the trucking company, the other person, you have to force them to take responsibility for the harm they've done so that our society doesn't have to pick up the tab.
Last question. How do you select your cases?
Well, because I'm only one lawyer, we have to be very selective, and I can only take the most seriously injured case. We try and help everybody, so if someone calls, if we can't take the case, we try and refer them to another lawyer who can, but we take the case where I can make the biggest difference. For example, in Malyia's case, you know, she's so hurt that obviously that'd be a case you want to help. We're drawn to the cases where we want most to help because these are the most hurt people in our society.
I want to thank you for sharing everything with us today, and we congratulate you on the case, and we wish you much success.
Thank you so much.
With other cases and helping other people.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.